Have you ever stopped to think about how a country's geography, its, sheer physical shape and its history can actually shape how its people look? Imagine one place, right, where you could meet people who look like they're from completely different continents. Maybe fair-skinned, blue-eyed folks, then people with copper skin and almond eyes, others with Polynesian features, even some with deep brown skin and tightly coiled hair. Sounds pretty unlikely for just one country, doesn't it? Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into Chile. It's a place researchers call one of Latin America's most, well, intriguing countries, exactly because of this incredible physical diversity. So our mission here is to unpack why. Why this amazing range of appearances? We're drawing straight from the sources you shared with us. We'll look at Chile's unique geography, that long, skinny shape, its history of migrations, and the resilience of its different communities, how they've all woven together this rich tapestry. The goal is for you to walk away understanding that there isn't just one Chilean look. Nope, it's a whole spectrum, and it tells a really deep story. All right, let's start with Chile's geography. It's pretty extreme. I mean, 4,300 kilometers long, north to south. That's huge. You've got everything from the driest desert on Earth to like polar ice fields down south. How does that kind of landscape, deserts, fertile valleys, huge mountains, icy bits, how does that start shaping the people?
That's absolutely the right place to start. Because before anyone else arrived,
Yeah.
you see how Chile's very first people adapted. It's fascinating. Take the Mapuche, for instance, mostly in central and southern Chile. They tend to have these strong, kind of stocky builds. That's not random. It seems like an adaptation developed over generations, suited for farming and working that land. Then, if you head north, way up into the Andes, the Aymara and Quechua communities there, they show this environmental shaping even more clearly. Living at high altitude, well, they adapted. Things like shorter limbs, broader chests. These are physical traits that help with oxygen efficiency in thin air. It's a really direct link between the environment and how people physically developed, a deep adaptation.
Wow, that's incredible, the land itself sculpting people. But that was just the beginning, right? Because then history comes rushing in. Let's talk about the big shift. 16th century Spanish colonizers arrive. How did that change the human landscape?
Yeah, the Spanish arrival was definitely a turning point, a huge one. It introduced European features into the gene pool, and through a lot of intermarriage, you get the creation of a new group, the mestizos.
Yeah.
This mix of indigenous and European ancestry. Well, now they make up a really big chunk of Chile's population, something like 60 to 65%.
Yeah.
So they form this sort of foundational layer of the diversity we see today. It's a real blend.
60 to 65%. Wow. So after that initial Spanish influence, did things kind of settle down, or did more people keep arriving and mixing things up?
Oh, definitely not settled. Chile's story of diversity just keeps going. Later on, particularly in the 19th and early 20th centuries, you had more big waves of European immigrants. We're talking Germans, Italians, British people, Croatians. They added even more diversity, especially down south. You can really see their legacy there today. It added, well, new shades to the palette.
That leads us perfectly into skin tone, because the range across Chile is just amazing. Can you walk us through that, the different complexions you might see and why?
Sure, if you're in Santiago, the capital, or the central regions, you'll probably see lighter skin tones pretty often, especially in families with more European background. But then travel south, and wow, you can find people with very fair skin, maybe blonde or light brown hair. That's a direct result of those German and Croatian settlers we mentioned. A very visible legacy. Now contrast that with indigenous communities, both way up north and way down south. They often have these beautiful coppery or darker bronze skin tones that reflects their ancient roots, their adaptation. And then there are the Rapa Nui on Easter Island, usually a medium brown complexion, a clear sign of their Polynesian heritage. And we shouldn't forget the Afro-Chileans, mostly up in Aliuca near Peru. They bring deeper brown tones and unique hair textures into this national mix. Each group adds something distinct.
It really is like a mosaic. But here's something I found fascinating, kind of an aha moment. The 2017 census said only about 9% of Chileans identify as indigenous, but genetic studies tell a different story, don't they?
They absolutely do. And it's a crucial point. Genetic research shows that indigenous ancestry is present in over 40% of the population. 40%. So that means lots of Chileans, even people with lighter skin who might not think of themselves as indigenous, they still carry that genetic heritage. It really shows how deep the mixing has gone over the centuries. It complicates how we think about identity just based on looks, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. That difference between the 9% identifying and the 40% with genetic markers. Does that create any sort of tension or maybe questions about identity, especially for people who maybe didn't know about their indigenous roots?
That's a really insightful question. It certainly points to a complex relationship between how people see themselves, the stories a nation tells about itself, and, well, the genetic facts. For some, finding out about this genetic link can be a powerful thing, maybe reconnecting them to a part of their heritage they weren't aware of. It definitely fuels the conversation in Chile about what it means to be Chilean, moving past just appearances.
A very profound point. Okay, let's get into some specifics. What about eye color? What does the mix look like there?
Well, the first thing to know is that most Chileans, maybe 75 to 80%, have dark brown eyes. That's a very clear sign of the strong indigenous and mestizo base of the population. It's definitely the most common eye color you'll see.
Knowing Chile, there's always a but, right? Those European migrations brought other colors too.
Exactly. So about 15 to 20% of Chileans have hazel, green, or even blue eyes. You find these colors more often in those southern regions settled by Germans and Croatians, places like Valdivia, Osorno, Punta Arenas, and it creates these really interesting contrasts. You could be down south and see tall, blonde, blue-eyed Chileans, then travel up to the Andes, and almost everyone has dark brown eyes and black hair. And
Hmm.
sometimes among mestizos, you get these beautiful, unexpected mixes like hazel or green eyes with olive skin. It just shows the blending.
Really hammers home that spectrum idea. Okay, how about height and build? Does geography still matter there? What are
Yeah.
the general trends?
Yeah, geography still has a say, for sure. On average, Chilean men are around 5'7", that's 171 centimeters, and women about 5'3", 160 centimeters. But like we touched on earlier, indigenous descended people, north or south, often tend to be a bit shorter, maybe stockier builds, again, likely adaptations. Whereas European descendants and many mestizos, particularly in central and southern areas, are generally taller, reflecting different origins and maybe different historical nutrition too.
And there's that surprising fact, isn't there, that Chileans have actually gotten taller recently. A health survey found average male height went up by 8 centimeters between 1950 and 2000. That seems like a lot in 50 years. What's behind that?
It is a lot, and it's a really interesting indicator. It's mostly put down to better nutrition and healthcare becoming more widespread. Basically, better conditions allow people to reach their full genetic height potential. So yeah, younger generations are often noticeably taller than their grandparents. It's like seeing social progress written on the body.
That's a really clear sign. Okay, let's zoom in a bit more. Hair texture and facial features. How does the blend show up there?
Hair texture is another great example of this genetic weaving. You've got the thick, straighted black hair common in indigenous groups. Then you contrast that with maybe blonde, finer hair from European lines, especially a German or Croatian. And then you have the distinct, tightly coiled hair from Afro-Chileans, or the wavy, dark brown hair typical of the Rapa Nui. Each one tells a story. And these different backgrounds mix beautifully in faces too. Mapuche people often have, say, broader faces, high cheekbones, almond-shaped eyes. Very characteristic. Chileans with strong European roots might have narrower noses, more angular jaws. Mestizos, often a combination of these features, a unique blend. And then the Rapa Nui add their Polynesian look, maybe wider noses, strong bone structure. It's just amazing how each face can hold so much history.
It really paints a picture of incredible variety. Let's pivot slightly and talk about the distinct identities within Chile, starting with the indigenous legacy. Who are the main groups today?
Well, the Mapuche are the largest indigenous group by far, about 1.7 million people. You see their presence, their features, that bronze skin, strong build, dark eyes, especially in central and southern Chile. They have a very visible connection to the land. Up north, you have communities like the Aymara Tacameño, with their own distinct looks, shaped by living in the highlands for centuries. Each has its own story. And it's important to remember the history here. For a long time in the 20th century, indigenous identity was, well, it was pushed to the margins. The sort of official story of Chile often focused more on the European side. But recently, there's been a real resurgence. Indigenous rights movements have brought back a lot of pride, making their culture and their physical presence much more central to Chile's story again. It's a big shift.
That sounds like a really important change. What about the Afro-Chilean community? You mentioned them earlier, but we don't always hear as much about them compared to, say, Brazil or Colombia.
You're right. Their profile is often lower internationally, but they're a vital part of Chile. It's a smaller community, maybe around 8,500 people officially counted in 2017, mostly up in Arica. But they bring their unique heritage, the darker skin tones, the hair textures, the facial features linked to African ancestry. Even as a smaller group, they add another crucial layer to Chile's diversity. Their presence matters.
And widening the lens even further out into the Pacific, Easter Island. The Rapa Nui people, they seem completely distinct, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. The Rapa Nui are another unique piece of the puzzle. Their roots are Polynesian, not South American mainland. And you see it in their appearance: broader noses, medium dark skin, wavy hair. It sets them apart. There are only about 7,750 Rapa Nui, but they're a powerful reminder that Chile isn't just that long strip of land. It reaches far out into the Pacific, bringing in a whole different stream of human heritage.
So after discussing all this incredible mix, does it even make sense to talk about a typical Chilean look? Is that something people debate?
It makes sense that people try to define it, but yes, it definitely sparks debate. A lot of debate. Someone might try to paint a picture: medium height, tan skin, dark eyes, dark hair, kind of a generalized mestizo look. But then, what about the very fair-skinned, blue-eyed person in Patagonia? Or the Mapuche person with strong indigenous features? Or the Afro-Chilean in Arica? That idea of typical starts to fall apart pretty quickly when you look at the reality on the ground.
And this links to representation, right? Like in tourism ads, you often see lighter skin, maybe more European-looking Chileans. Is that a criticism you hear, that it kind of erases other faces?
Yes, that's a very common criticism, and I think a valid one. When marketing or media focuses too much on that one look, it can feel like it's ignoring or even erasing the indigenous and Afro-descended parts of the population. It reinforces an old, incomplete story. Plus, you get the frustration where globally people might just lump Chileans into some vague Latin stereotype, ignoring the country's unique blend. People want their specific diversity recognized.
So the real takeaway, as we've kind of explored all along, is that there's no single look. It's a spectrum, shaped by the land, by history, by migration. What about the future then? Is Chile becoming more diverse or less?
Oh, definitely more diverse. Demographers expect that trend to continue. Just look at recent migration: people coming from Peru, Colombia, Haiti in the last couple of decades. They're adding new features, new mixes to the population, and intermarriage between all these different groups is still very common. So future generations, they'll likely carry even more blended ancestries. The spectrum will just get richer.
And socially, too, things are changing. You mentioned the indigenous rights movements.
Exactly. Groups like the Mapuche are demanding more recognition, politically, culturally. That ensures their identity, their features, remain central to what Chile is. And similarly, Afro-Chileans and the Rapa Nui are becoming more visible, more vocal. They're actively reshaping that idea of what it means to look and to be Chilean. It's dynamic.
So let's bring it back to you, the listener. Imagine you're walking through Santiago's main square, the Plaza de Armas. Just picture the faces. Maybe a student rushing by, mestizo features, maybe hazel eyes, an older Mapuche woman perhaps, her face full of character, dark braided hair. You might see a tall guy on his phone, fair skin, light hair. Maybe his family came from Europe generations ago, a Rapa Nui family visiting from Easter Island, taking pictures. All these different faces, different stories, but all sharing this identity: Chilean.
So what's the bottom line? What makes Chile's people look so varied? It's everything, really. It's the mountains meeting the coast, the desert meeting the islands. It's the endurance of indigenous peoples, the arrival of Europeans, the resilience of Afro-descendants, the unique presence of Polynesians. All of that converged in this one long country. So next time you think of Chile, try not to picture just one face. Picture a whole tapestry: light, dark, tall, short, indigenous, European, Andean, Pacific, all Chilean. Because Chile really shows that beauty isn't in sameness, it's in the richness of difference.